So I think this is an era where more entrepreneurs need to be born. People need to learn to discover what more can they do to increase their own living. So the quicker every person listening to this podcast or other podcasts out there learn to actually start to increase their income, build their own economy and stop waiting for handouts, the better. The handouts meaning, oh, the government is going to give me a house to live in. They're giving you a house to live in because they want to keep you small. In 2012, I said to my wife, I feel like the entrepreneurship in me is dying.
Dr. Daniel Moses, an entrepreneur born in Nigeria, started his career in Nigeria, but what do you do when you get knocked down a couple of times? Here's a guy who had to escape Nigeria to avoid the gang culture that's building up around him, who then started a business in oil and gas back in Nigeria, to only off the back of an accident to lose it all and be on the verge of bankruptcy, to come back to the UK, to start from the ground up, being an Uber driver to put food on the table, eventually becoming a leader in the property sector, and now helps others make money and build up their own fortunes and be in charge of their own destiny through investment in property portfolios. My name's Richard Osborne, and this is Drive, the small business podcast from UKBF. Learning about yourself and preparing for you coming visiting us today, I thought, as I was sort of listening to some previous podcasts and TV interviews that you've taken part in, your journey into property is, and I would say, very inspirational, particularly at some of sort of the bumps you've had along the road, if I say that, because your persistence in keeping going, particularly when things hit a low ebb, is something which many people, I suppose it'd be part of the reason why statistically they'll always throw this span around that half businesses that start fail within the first year. And I know that sort of having a very disciplined mindset around that is something that's very important to you. How would you describe your mindset and determination just generally that keeps you going at that point?
The only thing I knew was I'm going to become an entrepreneur today and I'll be successful tomorrow. What I did not know is that there are bumpy roads. It's a continuous roller coaster. It's a continuous reinventing yourself as the head of your organization. It's you going through highs and lows and accepting that it was normal. You see, you don't learn anything when you start a business today and it explodes tomorrow and all well and good and you're making so much money. And this is why one of the reasons where you see a lot of entrepreneurs, they start a business just like the lottery winner. They win a lottery today and then tomorrow they're completely wiped out because they did not go through the trials, the tribulations, the adversity and all of this. And in business, you're going to have two types of adversity. You're going to have personal adversity, just your personal challenge as a human being, as the leader, as the head of your organization. And you're going to have your business challenges, which is running your team, systems, softwares, upgrade, continuously driving that force behind the organization. So for me, looking back now, 20 years later, I realize what's happened to me is that I've just been learning. I've been going through that learning stage. I'm in my early 40s. You know, some people would break through in their early 20s, early 30s in businesses. But looking back at my early 40s and every single adversity I've been through, I realized that it is what makes you a strong entrepreneur.
So what was it about the word entrepreneur that you just now you decided, right, I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be an entrepreneur today and I'll make a success tomorrow.
Yeah.
What was it that made you want to take that path?
So the reason why I took the path of being an entrepreneur, it started as a very young age, goes all the way back when I was, back home in my home country, Nigeria. So I have brothers, cousins, way back, they used to ship, used goods, from Europe, Yeah. They ship all these different kind of used things, used microphones, fridges, televisions, and all these things and sell it back to Nigeria. And particularly, there's something to call non-tested electronic goods. So basically, you sell a non-tested electronic, whether it works or not, to someone in Nigeria, and they buy it. If it doesn't work, they take it to the electrician shops to fix it. So in Nigeria, you don't really replace things to brand new. You repair them. So you have a lot of people that can repair a mic that is broken completely, and it works again. So at a very young age, that was what I learned. I learned to be able to sell, whether it was working or not working. And I sold that for a living. So I always traded that, and I made money. And then when I was in university, that's exactly what I continued whilst I was in university. So I would sell all these different things: air conditioning, fridges, microwaves, cars, used clothes, because this, my family members used to bring all these things to Nigeria. So used clothes, I will sell these things. So I became very famous, in my little state where I'm from, Edo State, Nigeria. That's what I did. So at that time, it was like side hustling. I didn't really understand the true meaning of, entrepreneurship, but I realized that is what actually gave birth to me being an entrepreneur. And as I went through life till today, I discovered actually that's what gave birth to the entrepreneur that I am now.
Is that what you wanted to bring into the UK, to come into the UK and start a business from day one in the UK when you moved over here?
So I became a victim. So at the time I was selling things, I'll sell things to people that didn't pay me in time. I'll sell things to people that didn't basically, promise to pay me later. And some of these guys were members of different rivalry groups in campus, which is normal in universities in Nigeria, rivalry groups, gangs, and all of these things. And I remember sometimes I'll go and meet these people who I've sold things to pay me what they owe me. And I will be beaten up. I will be slapped. I will be kicked just for asking for, can I get my money back? And it got really, really bad that at some point in my life, I said, for how long am I going to keep, trying to get my money when these people you want to pay? You can't report the case to the police. If you do and you're caught, you'll probably be killed. So the only solution is you become a member of these guys. So at that time, I had to become a member of them to protect my business and to protect myself. So I bowed to that pressure and I became a member of the gang. So at this time around, I'm able to now sell. So people can't just, when I sell things to people now, knowing that they know, okay, this guy's, is part of another, a member of a different, community, in the gang, in the university. Now I got paid. But neither did I know that actually when you become a member of the gang, actually, you've just signed your own death warrant, which means you can actually just be killed like that, because they could obtain you. The word obtaining, obtaining means taking things from you, harshly, whilst you were a non-member, and they wouldn't kill you. But if you now become a member, when there is a war on campus, you are a target not to be obtained, but a target to be shot. And that was what happened. So for me, that was what led me to no, I didn't see this coming. I've got to leave this country.
That seems so difficult to comprehend. Like, you're a young person trying to sort of make your way financially.
Yes.
Getting yourself, just getting your foot on the ladder in business and growing. So you're within a university environment. So many people we know within the UK that 10,000, from research we've done, 10,000 people of that age or younger in the UK start their own businesses. Each and every year. I can't even comprehend somebody within a UK university or college trying to get a business started, or even just not going to college, and their life is on the line in that kind of environment just so that they can get paid.
Yeah.
People turn around and say cash is king in your business.
Yes.
But that's taking it to a whole new level.
Yeah. It was very difficult, because way back where I am from in Nigeria, I'm from the southern part of Nigeria, Edo State to be precise. Looking at back 20 years now, a lot of people, one of my best friend, Dennis, was killed. My best friend, Dennis, was killed. And that's not in the book, by the way, but that's what killed him.
That's shocking to hear. Is it fair to say though that when you landed on UK shores, you was landing at a very bottom level, effectively, whoever could put you up on their couch?
Coming to the United Kingdom, like nobody, I only knew 3 people when I got here within the first couple of months. I only knew one person initially, but through that one person, I met people, acquaintances gradually. But I slept on the floor, in one of my friend's room, and I used to wash, be the guy. I basically have to wash the room, wash the shoes, clear the house. That was my own way of contributing, being loyal so I can have somewhere to sleep. He fed me, and I remember those days when I first came here, after the first 1 or 2 weeks, just even having to have chicken at some time was quite challenging, and it was a very difficult situation because it's something I've never used to. I spoke in a different way. I understood English language in a very different way. I spoke English language in a very different way as well. And just being around that small community of just small Nigerians, and everybody was just focused on just living life to survive. So you would find within that little Nigeria community, as I grew to know many other people, some of them didn't have legal resident permit, so they work illegally. So some of them didn't have source of earnings. You name it, all sort of ways just to survive. Yeah. And that is exactly what I met here. When I came here, I did not know enough Nigerians that drove a car until, I think if I was right, about 6 months later, when I started going to the church, that I'll see some Nigeria has cars. Okay, that's fine. But most people, they work overnight. They come back and they're all drained. That was how my journey began in the UK.
Okay. And how did you manage to put food on the table? What was some of your first jobs effectively to pay the bills? Interestingly,
I used to do a job called Beke.
Yeah.
All right. I actually share this in my book as well. So Beke was a job that basically, if you go to a nightclub, I don't know if they still exist these days because I don't really go club anymore. So when you go nightclubs, you see a guy with a stick of lollipop with a perfume, and you take a lollipop from him, you spray perfume, you spray his perfume, you give him a pound, 50p. Obviously times have changed and maybe people are giving notes now, but back in those days is
contactless.
So these days now, so you give him a 50p, 20p and just grab a lollipop. Not just that, I was in the toilet doing that kind of job as well. From someone who was already doing business and I was surviving on that, I was making good money way back in Nigeria. It was very unbearable, but I'm here now. What do I have to do? Am I going to go back to Nigeria within a couple of days or weeks to get killed? That was the mindset.
What did you do next?
The fact is, looking back 20 years now, everything I've been through makes sense to me. But when I was going through them, it didn't make sense. Yeah. It was just more like I hated myself every day. I didn't like myself. I hated myself. But I think hope kept me alive. Hope rejuvenated my mindset. Oh, one day it's going to pass. One day I'm going to be great. One day Dr. Daniel Moses, I wasn't a doctor then, Daniel Moses is going to be wealthy. Daniel Moses is going to be able to inspire life. One day I'm going to be able to tell the story. One day I'm going to be... So what I didn't realize was I was actually affirming at that time I was going through all these different things that, there is light at the end of this tunnel. So for me, I was very hopeful that, before success, all right, you will go through roller coasters. I did not know these things at that time, because now I read a book by Brian Tracy. It says every successful people that you meet today, they built a mountain of struggles and failures of roller coaster to become the greatest version of themselves. So at the time I was going through all of these things, the only thing that kept me going was hope.
Hope is good, because if you're not hopeful, you're just going to be depressed. You're not going to take it forward. So, but surely you've actually got to take a positive action to get yourself out of that hole, because it's not going to be handed to you on a plate. What was your deciding action at that point? Because it took at some point eventually it took you back to Nigeria, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
You only lose when you stop working, when you stop taking action. So for me, those steps was, regardless of the fact that I had hope to be the next thing, but I realized I had to keep pushing through the pain. I had to keep pushing through the pressure. I had to keep taking one step at a time. Because yes, hope alone is not enough to get you to your point of desire. But actions and building that consistency, on a daily basis is what allows you to win as an entrepreneur. So the ability to ship those things back to Nigeria, make some profit and come back, do the same thing, and just going through in between, and was what literally helped me through those times.
You had some very ambitious plans.
Yeah.
Nice. What were those?
And I think one of the things that's also gotten me through is I learned a lot to talk to myself. So sometimes I talk to myself so mad that my wife think, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm just talking to myself." So I started to have the biggest conversation with myself. "Oh, Daniel, you're going to be great. Daniel, one day, you're going to sit with kings. One day, Daniel, you're going to sit with rulers of nations." And I affirmed this out of my subconscious mind, without even, because I wasn't into self-development. I wasn't into any sort of personal development. I'd never had mentors, until about 5-6 years, 2016, I started having mentors. So, for me as a Nigerian in the United Kingdom, there's a lot that when we come from nations like the third world countries like Nigeria, even till today, we go through this massive roller coaster, and I just really want to, kind of give a massive shout out to every single immigrant, whether Nigeria, Sudan, wherever you've come from and you decide to make it big in life. I just want to say, keep doing it, and, congratulations on your successes, because it's hard. It's hard when you come to a new terrain, a new culture, a new way of life, and to still keep pushing through your pain to become the greatest version of yourself. So for me, going through those adversities kept me going, and I said, I will make it. So what changed for me was when I met my wife. I met my wife in 2000 and I think from around about a year plus later.
You've got to get this date right. I
met my wife in 2000 and 2005. So when I met my wife in a bus. I actually also tell the story in my new book, The Test. Everything just changed. And I still remember till today, the moment she walked through the bus and carrying so many bags and sitting down, and I just said, that's the woman. And the moment I met my wife, we started dating not too long after that. And then I proposed to her. We got married within a very short space of time. 6 months, we got married. So the moment I was able to go through the adversity, settle down in the UK with my wife, now we have a family, and I'm able to kind of go back and forth from London to Nigeria. I'm going to say exactly as it is. My life was a mess. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting, so it's almost like you get one little success, you take 5 steps backward. You get one little success, you get 2 backwards. And that was what was happening. So 2012, I said to my wife, I feel like the entrepreneurship in me is dying. I'm not able to do business the way I want to. I'm struggling with knowing people. I'm struggling expanding my network. I'm struggling different things. I'm not able to access the kind of money I need. Let me go back home. Everybody was telling me in Nigeria, there's 2 types of oil and gas. There's 2 types of sectors in the oil and gas industry, actually. You have the upper stream and you have the lower stream. So the upper stream is the likes of the shares, the BP, APs,
big brands,
the big brands. So that's
yeah.
the upper stream oil and gas. So they do the exportation, the refinery, and all of that. The lower stream is the retailing. So where, for example, petrol stations, supplies, logistics, and all of that. So that's the downstream. Yeah. And there was also a lot of money in the downstream. And the reason why there was a lot of money in the downstream is because you can go to the refinery in Nigeria or the depots, and you can pay some money, and they can give you supplies, and you can supply it to a petrol station. So if you buy it for like £1, you can actually supply it to a petrol station for £3, and you can make £2 margin. And plus, you can also make another £3 margin from the transportation. So it's very lucrative. So I started moving petroleum products from these different, from the depots to supply to the to retailers.
I'm thinking in my mind here like tanker lorries.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and I started moving those tanker lorries with petroleum products. I started doing that. And life for the first time since I first came to the UK, I felt on top of the mountain. I felt like, whoa, how come I did not know this all my life? How come I didn't know? So I was enjoying the money. Everything was good. I was able to travel from Nigeria back to the UK, from UK back to Nigeria. I was able to move around. Now, one of the days in 2015, late 2015, I received a phone call from one of my drivers. 2 of my petroleum tankers, all right, loaded in excess of over 100,000 liters. All right, so we have 65,000 liters. So in Nigeria, you have different types of tankers capacity. So 2 of them go into the northern part of Nigeria, run into each other, somersaulted into a ditch or a valley, whatever we want to call that. Now, the weeks before, our insurance policy had expired. We had that major explosion, got burst into flame. I lost all my money, lost my tankers. Thank God nobody died. Thank God, nobody died. Now, I'm in a loss. I'm in pain. I'm in shock. Okay, what do we do? Let's go back to the books.
And just like a click of a fingers, like that.
Like that. And everything basically ruined.
What was your first instincts and what were the first things you did from getting that phone call? What happened next?
I think the next morning I felt like I was going to die. Having the most success I've ever had in my journey as an entrepreneur, very young man, 2 lovely kids, wife here in the UK, mortgage to pay in the UK, being able to travel back and forth. At that point in my life, I just felt like that's it. Entrepreneurship is not for me. Business is not for me. That's just how I felt. And I remember basically just for weeks not being able to eat properly, drink properly, and just wondering, what next? What do I do? Like, I had a brain freeze. Like, what do I do? Every day the question was, what do I do? Insurance policy was expired a couple of weeks before. Now, I learned a lot of lessons. And one of the biggest lessons that I learned is that you have a starting phase of a business. You have a growth state of a business. You have a scaling phase of your business. Obviously, I didn't know any of this in 2015. But looking back, when you are an entrepreneur at the growth stage of a business, micromanage everything. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is why they say most businesses fail within the first 1 year. Yeah. In fact, statistics have shown to us that 50% of new businesses actually collapse within the first 1 year. Yeah. And then you then have a certain different percentage that goes into their first 5 years. Then if you survive your 5th year, that's when you can actually call yourself a business.
It's a really long tail. If you look at the graphs, you've got the first year, huge number of drop off. Year 2 comes down a bit, and it sort of plummets within the first 5 years, and then you've got a really long tail. Exactly as you say, make it past your 5th year, you're in the absolute minority of successful businesses that are still going.
So, looking back as an entrepreneur, the road to being a successful entrepreneur, it's not an easy one. But one of the things that I learned from this is the mindset to always reinvent yourself, adapt, remap, and build a strong resilience level.
What I found really inspiring to see is that as you hit that point, as your business that you'd built up and was doing really well, just disappeared through that disaster, and it almost sunk you to bankruptcy. You did what you had to do. You took up Uber driving to get some money coming, and just you going back to what we were saying earlier, you did what you had to do.
Yes.
I would go as far as to say not too proud. Literally, if I needed to take a job, whatever it is that pays the mortgage and puts food on the table for me to rebuild from, I will do it.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I did. So I remember telling my wife, I'm not going back to the UK. I'm not going back to Nigeria. I said, well, my wife literally asked me, I remember that Christmas, she asked me, what next? That was the question.
Yeah.
And I'm like, looking at her, I said, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go and get a job.
Yeah.
And I remember January 2016, I got my first job with Yodel and I became a delivery driver. And that was enough to survive with towards the end of the year, towards the end of the January. And that was enough. And then from there to Amazon, from Amazon to becoming an Uber driver. So I think by May that year, I became an Uber driver. And then because I already had a significant lifestyle, because business was good previously, the pressure was even stronger. It almost led to 3 divorce attempts between me and my wife, because the pressure was just unrealistic. It was just absolutely insane. And driving for Uber 18 hours a day initially it was good, because I had to get out of the house for 18 hours a day. I literally got lost in the wheel. And I would drive and drive and drive, pick up the kids, drop them off, sleep for 3-4 hours, go back again. And at the time, Uber could allow you to drive 24 hours if you like it. And I had to do what I had to do, because number one, I look at the face of my children and I'm like, number one, I'm doing this not for me, I'm doing this for them. Because if my dad had done so much for me and I had a lot to inherit, probably I would not be doing this. So I don't want my kids to wake up one day and they look at me like, oh, my dad didn't work hard for us. So for my kids, they kept me going. My kids kept me going. They just helped me go past that part, because I had to go and work 18 hours to make sure mortgage was paid, council tax was paid. They had to go, anything that they wanted, I could provide. And I went through all of that. It was painful. It was really, really, really painful, just knowing that you had built a business, employed people, and all of a sudden there was nothing else. And all I could look at is just stuck in the wheels every single day, and then depression kicks in. I became depressed. And I remember going through depression, going through all different type of things. I started suffering from sleeping paralysis, and I started suffering from, almost wanting to.
It's a dark place when you have a lot of people depending on you, and you feel that you put the pressure on yourself to feel that you're not doing enough, you should be doing better.
It's hard. It's just hard when you are, sometimes you start asking yourself, why don't you just live a normal life? But if you have the hunger to be the greatest version of yourself, it feels like you're doing yourself evil, not actually taking the steps to wanting to be great, to better yourself. Because nobody told me to be an entrepreneur, but I've never had a proper job before. So I'll be probably useless in a workspace. So even if I was to go and, become a software tester or a business analyst, because I'm not used to that, it's going to take me so much. And again, I've always been on the school of thought, do what you love. It's only by doing what you love that you become successful. So this is one of the reasons why you see some doctors, they love being a doctor and they really excel. Then you have people who are doctors, but they don't love being a doctor as well. You have lawyers. And the reason why people take a certain career and they excel is because they love it. And the reason why people take a career and never excel is because they hated it. Because desire and passion is something that you can't take from someone. When you have passion and you have desire and you love what you do and you bring it all together collaboratively, you become the greatest instrument for yourself.
So what is it about doing what you enjoy that is that thing that you enjoy?
I inspire hundreds and hundreds of people today who have heard my story. So I now have a massive, massive passion to using my story of whether it's true success I have achieved, or whether how did I turn adversity into the success that I have today, which I've been, I've been through over the last 5-6 years now. I've been consistent. It's being able to just give advice to people and just like, listen, I say I'm of a school of thought that says never go to the wrong person for the right advice. Talking about passion and talking about that. So when it comes to the passion side, it took me years to now understand I love this, because the thing about entrepreneurs, sometimes we're chasing money, we're trying to be wealthy, we're trying to be successful, but what we're actually chasing is not the money, it's actually finding our true purpose.
You like mentoring and helping people in that side. And when I've looked at sort of as you've built your career, dare I say, you've also identified there's a number of people who've come from similar backgrounds to yourself,
Yes.
who have come in this country and who are underrepresented within property.
Yes.
And it's been great to see how you help those people as well. Sell it to me.
Yes.
How you do it well. And by that I mean how you teach me well and support people ethically.
Yes.
In building financial independence for themselves to take control of their destiny.
I mean, for me, as I mentioned, if you notice throughout my conversation so far, and if you read more, of my new book, The Test, success is not overnight. And I say, and I actually called this. I did an interview the other day, and I said everybody thinking success is get rich quick should start debunking from it. In order for you to become a successful person, if I knew what I know now when I started my journey as an entrepreneur, what is the one thing that I would have done differently? Number one, would have seek knowledge. The moment I think or thought I became knowledgeable, I would have set myself a 5 to 10 year plan. But I did not know that. So I was chasing, entrepreneur is about making money, right? So at every given point in time.
The money rather.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was chasing the money. So I'm selling things, I'm making profit. Going to oil and gas, I'm expanding, I'm chasing money, right? I'm doing business. And everything is fine. All right. And then I had a crash. If I knew that knowledge was so important, first of all, knowledge will allow me to understand the importance of micromanaging things at the level of my business at that time. So let's bring this into property. Nobody ever got successful and wealthy in property in a year, in 6 months. Go and check. Anyone who has ever become wealthy in life, they don't talk about the achievements of success. They're stable now for 1 year. It's all about, first of all, you being knowledgeable. You have to be knowledgeable of that industry. You have to know the ins, you have to know the out, you have to have the support system, you have to have the professionals who are going to be able to answer the questions that you need. So solicitors, accountants, tax advisors, all these different people, you have to have them all around you. And it takes a lot of work to put them in place. So why is what I do, for example, will help someone? Because I have that power team now. So when you plug into what I do, I'm not teaching you get rich quick. I'm teaching you get rich for sure. And I'm telling you, if you're, like I say this all the time, if you want to get rich quick, please don't come to my training. Don't come around me. But if you want me to help you set a 5-year plan, let's work towards that 5-year plan. I'm your guy. Yeah. Because, yes, I see it all the time when people say, people are going to get into rent-to-rent HMOs, rent-to-rent service accommodation, and you're going to be wealthy tomorrow, you're going to make money tomorrow. Again, it's still the money selling concept. The money selling concept is make £2,000 now, today, you're happy. Make £2,000 tomorrow, you're happy. What then happens to the next 10 months you don't make £2,000? How do you pivot? How do you navigate? How do you rock those very dirty bottom? How do you do it? Because people don't understand the ability to reinvent, readjust, recreate. Because entrepreneurship is all about creativity, generating an income, creating stability, and floating rather than sinking. One of the things I learned during lockdown was how to float and not sink. In property, it's business. In property as a business, it's a profit and loss business, just like every other thing else. The only thing that keeps you above the water is because the liquidity is in an asset that appreciates in value over time. So if you understand property in that concept that you can get in now, but as long as you can hold on to this 10 years, 20 years, that's where the real wealth is. That's where the real capital equity appreciation is. So people don't understand this. People think, okay, it's just about the cash flow in property, whether you're renting to rent someone an asset or whether you bought today and generating an income tomorrow. It's all a myth. What is the truth is that it takes a long time. There's an asset in my portfolio in 1996. The asset was sold for £64,000 in Bromley. Sold for £64,000. I then bought the same property, all right, from whoever lived there for at least 20 years, all right, for £450,000. So 1996 to 2020, you can see the time there. Yeah. And it sold for how much? £450,000. Today's market, the same property is now worth 1.1 million.
Do you ever fear that the property sector in itself, the house prices, is unsustainable?
Interestingly, I wouldn't say it's unsustainable because over time, everything is about time.
Yeah.
Whatever, in my journey as an entrepreneur, looking back at 20 years, and I was having a very interesting conversation with my financial advisor 2 days ago. He said, Dan, every single day you should be so proud of yourself. You did not have what you have today in 4 years ago. He said you did not have them. So time is the compensation.
My first house was £46,000.
Yes.
Which my wife and I ended up selling for, I think it was about £180,000 back in 2005.
From 48 to...
it was from about 93, 94 to 2005. We had made over 120 grand. So that's probably, during that period from the 90s to the 2000s, yep, was probably the biggest hike in house prices, perhaps, excluding London. The rate of salary or income that majority, pretty much everybody in the country is earning, has been going up like that. But house prices have been going really up high, to a point where my daughter's just turned 21 last week. So I have an 18-year-old son and a 21-year-old daughter. They're going to be looking at getting their own houses at some point imminently. But it's almost impossible to get a mortgage at an affordable rate compared to what we did, both of us really, when we were first getting housing mortgages. Morally, for the younger generation who are coming through today to get on the property ladder, it feels like house prices need to crash down to be in line with inflation. It feels like that needs to happen for the younger generation. It's not going to happen. But so how do you see it happening?
This is why I thought about time. So it's, for me, in my opinion, in my take, that's never going to happen. Property price, especially in London, for example, if we're thinking about that, that means we're saying a house that was sold in 2020 for 450 can crash back to £64,000.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen.
That's end of time.
Yeah.
So that means there's going to be an Armageddon. You and I are not going to exist anymore for that to happen. Yeah. The only thing that needs to happen in order for sustainability to be created is you as a human being, as a person. You have to learn to bring value to yourself, to become someone who can earn more and more on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis. So this is one of the reasons why people now need to create value from themselves. A time will come, people who are in a standard job will never, ever, ever, ever again be able to own a home. That's for sure.
That's where I actually see it more likely. So it happens in many parts of Europe where people don't own homes.
No.
They live in rented accommodation.
Yes.
And there is usually either corporate or investors, private investors, people, such as yourself, who own and maintain the properties.
But that's where the interest rate is going.
Yeah.
Because if you really look at this now,
Yeah.
with the current interest rate, if you earn £50,000, you're never going to be able to own you're not going to pass affordability. So if you look at the people who are buying houses now, are people that understand how to work the debt system.
Yeah.
People who understand how to leverage the system. And what do I mean by that? If you know how to raise money and understand the power of leveraging debt to create wealth, those are the only people that are going to end up owning assets. Because it's going to be corporatalized, where, for example, you're going to have to rent from the corporate, the corporate owners. And that's where the market is going. So people are not going to be able to own houses, because why are we in the cost of living crisis? What's happened is the cost of our living has gone up, but our wages has remained the same.
Yeah.
So because our cost of living is gone up and our wages has remained the same, now the government is trying to say, okay, let's give you some £2,000 to support you on your gas and electric.
Doesn't even scratch the surface.
And that's what's been happening. So until we actually find a way to, it depends. So I think this is an era where more entrepreneurs need to be born. People need to learn to discover what more can they do to increase their own living. I come from a third world country like Nigeria. Yeah. The base rate in Nigeria, interest lending, is over 23%. Lending money from the central bank government in Nigeria, which is equivalent to the Bank of England. You're looking at over 23%. All right? In a nation like Nigeria, there's more entrepreneurs creating their own economy rather than actually waiting on the government. And I think that's what's going to start happening. Thank goodness, like currently, AIs, Britain is one of the first nation now to literally support that industry, while every other person is kicking it. Gets technology influencers supporting it now. So the quicker every person listening to this podcast or other podcasts out there learn to actually start to increase their income, build their own economy, and stop waiting for handouts, the better. Yeah. The handouts meaning, the government is going to give me a house to live in. They're giving you a house to live in because they want to keep you small. But if we start learning what can we do to bring to the market to be the greatest version of ourselves so we can earn more money, then that's the only thing that's going to bring these different types of stability, in my opinion, by the way. This is just my opinion.
I absolutely agree. Both from the property perspective and the way that just housing for across the country is heading, completely agree. I see that being the only way to actually sustain it. But also, as you've demonstrated yourself, change your life yourself and just hold yourself accountable and get on and make things happen, because things don't get handed to you. People will be able to quote that one unique edge case example where somebody just magically became a millionaire. That's one person in a population of billions. You either make it happen or you don't. Yeah,
Elon Musk is being celebrated across the globe today. He's one of the richest man on the planet, the richest man on the planet. So, example for him, he started at a very young age of having different sort of ideas in his brain, and he started creating things that led to PayPal, eBay, and SpaceX, and all these different things. AI is now that he's championing. And also not creating robotic as well. Yeah. So you name it. So every one of us have ideas. We need to find how to bring our ideas to the hands of people that's got money. And the more we start to listen to our intuitions and have an intention behind it, the more money we can actually earn. Look at this podcast now. We're here having a chit chat. Podcasts are becoming shows on TVs. Right? And I recently got someone approach me to be on TV on my podcast. Social media is another way that you can actually, if you've got a good voice, you might want to sync to your mic, post it on social media, it goes somewhere to somewhere, you get discovered. So it is, I think for me, it's a generation, the generation that we are now is a generation where you have to focus on you to become the greatest version of yourself in order to actually increase your own way of living, so that whatever the economy throws at you, it doesn't really affect you because you're actively pushing yourself out there. It's not a time to be lazy. It's a time to be more positive.
That is fantastic. And that is a really good point, I think, to end on, because it is such an important lesson. If anybody takes anything away from here, is that Dr. Daniel, it's been fantastic speaking to you. It's a great journey, great story, and you are the epitome of somebody who will continue to push and adapt and push forward all the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Drive. I hope you found it insightful and useful. But before I go, have a look at the app you're listening to this podcast on. See that follow button, give it a press, and you'll be notified of all future episodes as they come out. It also helps us understand where most of our followers are and where to really be pushing this podcast to.